who have managed to log in, first people, and everyone else who has managed to log in, you're all very, very welcome. I'd like to start. I hope you can see the presentation.
I think
Ronald,
the
can you see the
slides are not
presentation?
yet back up. Okay. Yeah, we can see you now. However, I think we can't see.
All right.
All right.
Using this simple quote, nothing surprises me. I work with HR. Now, what this the perspective that I want to start off with is that there are so many different needs, so many different challenges, and they all arise from the fact that God is a God of diversity, and there are very many. All of us are different from one another. Now you're bringing this team of different people with different aptitudes, with different abilities, with different perceptions to work together in an organization and to achieve specified goals together. So a lot of things tend to happen along the way. And that is why we say nothing surprises me, because there are so many things that can happen, and it is normal and it is human for those kinds of things to happen. So the agenda for today is going to revolve around a few things, which is the definitions. We are going to look at a few definitions. Then we'll look at some truths, some figures and statistics that are impacting on our workplaces these days. Then we'll look at a short story which details differences in perceptions and how they can change the workplace positively. Then we'll look at what is changing in the workplace, and then we'll zero in on some critical HR gaps and how they can be identified. And then we'll look at how to respond to those gaps, and we'll end with a call to action. Now, human resource practitioners tend to be regarded as people who solve problems that you didn't know existed in ways that you can't understand. Um, Again, this goes back to the first quote, which is that the needs are many, the challenges are many, and there is no one solution that fits all. Every organization has different needs, and every organization goes about solving them in different ways. So let's look at a few definitions. And of course, the first one is, what is a gap? And this is looking at it from a very simple perspective. A gap is the difference between where you are and where you want to be. If you are earning 10,000 shillings a day today and you want to earn 100,000 shillings, the gap between 10,000 and 100,000 is the one you are trying to bridge. So, what about human resource gaps? These are gaps which are people or labor related challenges in an organization that make it difficult for an organization to deliver on its goals. They are people related, they are labor related challenges which impact negatively on organizational goals. What is an HR gap analysis? Now, in order to identify these gaps that impact on organizations, negatively. You have to carry out an HR gap analysis. And this consists of measuring a current state and comparing it to the desired one in order to reveal the discrepancies and the gaps so that you can find solution to them. So that analysis is the starting point of trying to address the gaps and trying to get the solutions. Then there is the HR gap identification process. And this refers to the process of uncovering deficiencies within an organization's human resource, practices, systems, or workforce capabilities that hinder optimal performance. And this one specifically is from the Harvard Business Review. So the HR gap identification process helps us to uncover the deficiencies within organizations in terms of practices, systems, and workforce capabilities. And then, once you have identified them, then the next thing is how to solve them. And that brings me to the last definition, which is HR gap resolution. And this refers to the process of addressing and closing gaps within an organization's HR functions to improve performance, productivity, and to align with the business goals. So these definitions are important because this whole presentation revolves around the gap analysis and how to identify the gaps and then how to respond to those gaps. So let's move forward and look at some truths in the workspaces of today. And please remember that we are in a global village, and therefore the statistics we are using are also global in a way. But the important thing is that human nature, whether black, red, gold, or yellow, is the same, irrespective of where we are. It is just the environments which change. So according to Gallup, the USA statistics, HR statistics development organization, 85% of workers are disengaged from their jobs. 85%. Now you can imagine you have 100 workers and 85 are disengaged or they are giving diminishing outputs and only 15 out of 100 are giving value, then there is a very big challenge. Um, but the comforting, I don't know whether it is a comforting, system or not, to know that this is common across the globe. So it is not only in our workplaces that this is found, but it is common where human nature in workspaces is found. The second statistic we need to take into account is that 81% of employees in organizations are looking for new opportunities. 81%. That means that 80% of your workforce is not happy with you. They are not happy with your business. They are not happy with the opportunities that you are presenting to them in your business. And as a result of that, we have seen an increasing trend of restructuring, reorganization, and redesigning of workplaces and work structures and work systems. For example, in currently for us here in Uganda, government has already announced the merger of government agencies. And truth be told, all the people in these agencies are looking for opportunities elsewhere. And where are those opportunities? Of course, the opportunities are in our businesses because once these people get out of the corporate world, they are all going to fall into the private sector where our businesses lie. So we can leverage this. It can be an advantage to those of us in business because now you have a caliber of people that uh, have a better work ethic, so to speak, in inverted commas, whom we can employ in our businesses. The third statistic to take into account is that businesses with highly engaged staff are more profitable than others by 21%. Now, we all know that in business, even to get 5% profits, you're doing well. Now, if you can improve your profitability to the tune of 21%, this is what we are all looking for. So engaged staff deliver the right results all the time. And therefore, in our businesses, we need to be sure that we are taking advantage of this and taking advantage and making sure that we have engaged staff. And then the fourth one is that a healthy work culture boosts revenue 4 times. Now, work culture is a very tricky thing because it sits in the background. It is not seen, it is difficult to touch, but it is there and it impacts greatly on organizational results. So if it boosts revenue 4 times, it means that revenue can be increased 300% by just focusing on bridging the gap between the way things are done and the way things should be done. Um, Now, um, these statistics are very simple and straightforward, but they impact seriously on the way we do business. I'll talk about a simple example related to changes in perception and how they can impact on an organization. There's an organization I worked for, and we had an advantage of getting a Mzungu MD. Now, when this person came to head this organization, of course, you know the African way of doing things. We were doing things the African way. And when he came in, without doing anything, in the first 1 month, he did the following. One, he set targets for all the different departments. And these targets were not many, one or two. For example, for us in HR, he gave us 2 targets. One, we had to maintain the vacancy ratio at 5% and less. In other words, we had to fill all the vacant positions because it is people who do the work in businesses. And but recognizing that you may not be able to have the full complement of staff all the time, we said, okay, we can have the tolerable vacancy ratio is 5%. And then he said, every time you're recruiting, I, as the managing director, must sit with the people, the new people you are recruiting, and orient them thoroughly so that they understand exactly what I need to be done, the do's and don'ts, and what I will not tolerate. And indeed, for all the time I was there, which was like 6 years, this MD attended all the orientation programs. And it was very important because, first of all, the new employees felt that they were very happy. They felt that they had interacted with the most important person in the organization, and they got a chance to understand their mindset and what was tolerable and what was not tolerable. Now, that is very important for the development of culture in an organization. Now, this gentleman always used to give immediate feedback. When things went wrong, He would not wait for the report to come out, and so on and so forth. He would take it upon himself to find out what the challenge was, why things were not done the right way, and what needed to be done to sort out the issue. Now, in giving this immediate feedback, um, he would arrest all the negative practices before they got out of hand. Then he looked at work-life balance. In that organization, everything was computerized. All the work was done on a system, and this system, the closing hours, of course, in government offices is 5 o'clock, but this system would be closed at 7 in the evening to allow people to kind of wrap up the day's work. Now, when they closed at 7, it meant that they would go home late, and the drivers would have to drop them back at home. And therefore, the drivers would take the cars, and they would have so that they can come early to the next meeting. And they would do all kinds of things with their cars in the evening. Now, so he said, no, this system must close at 6. And indeed, when the system closed at 6, the staff were able to go back home early. The drivers would not take the cars in the evenings, and therefore, um, people would spend more time with their families, and there was the wastage of resources was reduced. And then, because of the working like 6 days a week, we would carry out training over the weekends. And for him, he said, no, the weekend is for people to work with their family, to stay with their families. And he closed out all weekend training programs. Then he looked at salaries. Um, in micro microfinance organizations, there are the loans officers, and then there are the banking officers who, because these organizations, they lend out, but they also take deposits. So the loans officers were earning a lot more than the banking officers because, of course, credit was bringing in a lot more money than banking. However, the two functions were the basis of this organization. And just because one function was an internal function and was not relating so much to the outside like the credit officers were, both of them were critical to the performance of the organization. So he looked at this and he said, no, the retainer for these two cadres of staff had to be the same. So whereas the banking officers were earning like 700,000 a month, and the loans officers were earning like 1 million, he brought up the banking officers to the same level as a retainer, and then the loans officers would get extra depending on their ability to recover loans. Then he looked at the salary structure and he said, this salary structure, many organizations benchmark with government salary structure, and then they use the notches, the starting notch, the middle notch, the upper notch. And he said, no, that system is not going to work. Later, so we moved to the salary range system, whereby you all start at the same place, but annually, because of performance, people get increments, or be it 5% or whatever, 10%, whatever increment is agreed on. And one of the things that was causing a lot of havoc in the organization was that, for example, somebody had worked for 3 years in the bank, and then this other person comes and is earning the exact same amount of money. and there was no difference. Now, with the salary range, everybody kept on moving along the range, and that made staff very happy. So, this led to improvements in staff productivity and satisfaction just by changing the way things had been perceived in the past and how this neutral and objective person was perceiving things. And just those few changes made a very big impact on productivity. So, in our workplaces, the lesson here really is we get so used to doing things one way, and we forget that there are many different ways of skinning a cat. And that if you change a few things, you will still skin the cat, but you will also improve engagement and productivity. And that is where we want to focus. So let's briefly look at what is changing in the workplaces. Workplaces are changing, the power dynamics are changing. Whereas there is a recognition that technical and line functions are the ones that contribute directly to productivity. This is changing to managing staff for engagement and productivity. Here, the thinking is that when staff are engaged, the productivity will automatically go up. So, technical competence and so on and so forth is impacted by engagement. Hence, the importance of focusing on staff being engaged. The focus on qualifications is changing to ability, attitude, expertise, and values. We have seen an increasing trend in our workplaces where we bring in people because they have the right qualifications. And then when they get on ground to do the work, there are no results. The ability may be there, but the attitude is very important. If a person's attitude is not positive and it is not in the right place and their resilience levels are not in the right place, definitely there will be no results. And the focus is also changing to expertise. Each and every function in the organization is very important and should be manned by people who are experts in it. And then the values. Now, the values in this country are quite a bit of a challenge. And of course, the most common one is integrity. And the way integrity is understood and manifested in the workplaces many times leaves a lot to be desired. Hence, the focus on these areas so that the organization can impact the values that they want to see in their workplaces and also reward them. The focus is changing from process efficiency alone. Process efficiency is very, very important, but we are changing from that alone to focusing on promoting work cultures through which an organization's ideologies can be spread. So yes, the process can work, but are the values, the right values in place? It is changing from HR administration and HR advocacy per se to HR strategic partnering, even up to board levels. These days, even boards need to have HR people, people who understand people and people issues. So for better results. The focus is also changing from the use of local labor for effectiveness to leveraging diversity and cost effectiveness. For cost effectiveness, where we are seeing an influx of new labor in the market, new labor in terms of immigrants coming in, um, people from other countries coming in, Everybody's moving. This is the global village. As our people are moving from Uganda to go to the Arab world for job opportunities, other people from other areas are also coming here in our environment, also to look for better opportunities. So we need to learn to work with other people for and to leverage diversity for cost effectiveness. The workplaces are also changing from working strictly from 9 to 5 in offices to telework and management of assignments rather than time. Ever since the corona pandemic, telework has taken um, a center stage. So people are leveraging on the cost effectiveness of working from home, which is cheaper. It is cheaper for the organizations and it is also cheaper for the individuals. Now, the challenge for us in our environment here is changing people's mindsets, supervisors and managers, from managing time to managing work assignments. Supervisors are so used to people coming in and working from 9 to 5. Now, when they are working from home, it is very difficult for you to monitor the 9 to 5 perspective, unless if you have a very robust um, online system of doing that. So, the most practical thing to do is to manage people by work assignments. What what was what were the targets set for today, for this week, have they been achieved? Other than focusing on time. Now, at a global level, we are also seeing a change in focus from employee satisfaction at work to employee happiness at work. In places like the Arab world, happiness has become the norm. You must keep your employees happy because they spend a lot of their time, um, 1/3 of their time in the workplaces, all with work colleagues. So, are these people working together? How do you develop teams to make sure that people can work together to achieve results, but also be happy working together, be comfortable with one another as they work together? All right, so let's look at a few HR gaps and how to identify them. We've tried to make this very simple by looking at the common problems in our workspaces and the signs and symptoms, and therefore the HR gap that is being manifested. So many times we hear people saying, my staff don't know how to do what needs to be done. And the signs and symptoms of this are lack of technical knowledge, inexperienced staff deployed, poor attitude towards work, poor leadership and supervisory skills. All these are manifestations of competence gaps. Or you get business owners saying, my staff know what is needed, but they just don't do it. So the signs and symptoms of this are indiscipline, absenteeism, abuse of power, unprofessionalism in the way work is done, low staff morale, insubordination. I think now we are seeing what used to be called insubordination is becoming the norm, especially with regard to the differences in age, generations, and of course, sexual harassment. All these are signs and symptoms of an engagement gap. Or my business is not observing best practices, and my business is not observing the labor laws. So we are seeing in the workplaces many staff grievances, and when these grievances arise, then the employers issue a lot of penalties and fines. There's failure to pay NSSF and taxes. Those people are always on our case. There's a lack of operational manuals and standards. Our processes are not standardized and they are not documented anywhere, and inadequate controls. So all these are signs and symptoms of a compliance gap. Then we also get to hear people saying the way we do things here is different from the way things should be done. In other words, we, as the leaders, we kind of say, do what I say, but don't do what I do. So the way the staff react is that they form groups and cliques. Every time there's a disconnect between what should be done and what is being done, it is a case for excessive gossiping. People will gossip about it because of that disconnect. There is procrastination on critical assignments. There are endless meetings trying to sort out the same problem over and over again. Failure to live by the core values, especially by the leaders in the organizations, in the businesses, and then intolerance for workplace mistakes. All these are indications of a culture gap. Then myself don't know what is expected of them. And the signs and symptoms here are there are no job descriptions. Today, somebody comes in, they assigned this work, tomorrow another work, and tomorrow a different type of work, and so on and so forth. So there are duplication of roles. People keep crisscrossing each other's paths because of unclear descriptions of what they should be doing. There's role confusion. There is a difference between current and desired performance levels because at the end of the day, this is the measure of whether the two are aligned. So these are role definition and role clarity gaps. Another example is we don't work with those kinds of people. And this is an indication of nepotism and favoritism and workplace discrimination and also age discrimination. Um, Recently, I was reading about an example where a young, like, I should call it like a millennial, was the youngest member of a management team. And when they went into this management meeting, this person unconsciously told one of the older employees on the in the meeting, and he said, "Yes, I'm trying to do that, but mom, you need to realize that it is not easy." Now, the use of the word mom was an indicator of the other person being older and being like a mother figure to this person. And when he said it, he was so shocked, and but he could not take it back. So these are what should I call it? Workplace discrimination issues, which keep coming up, especially because the older members, the baby boomers, are more stable in workplaces than the millennials and the Gen Zs. So all these are diversity gaps. Then my staff are not delivering what we need to deliver. And the signs and symptoms here are performance is not aligned to strategic objectives. Staff don't have performance targets. There is no system for performance reviews. Poor overall financial performance because all these results impacts on finances of their business. And then lack of consequences for poor performance. When we tolerate poor performance, that is the starting point of our problems in our Ugandan businesses. The tolerance for poor performance. People don't deliver on what they are supposed to deliver, and it is okay without us realizing that at the end of the day, if everybody does not deliver what they are supposed to deliver, the business is going to be impacted. So we used some methods to identify HR gaps in businesses. And one of these is conducting employee surveys to gather feedback on job satisfaction and areas of development. I think we are weak in this area, especially in the business sector. We do not attach adequate importance to getting feedback from our staff on different areas. Then performance appraisal reviews. These tend to highlight discrepancies in skills and performance expectations. However, this is an area that also is challenging, especially because supervisors don't have the or don't think it is important to give people feedback on their performance, and so they don't do it the way it should be done. Then the use of HR metrics to analyze turnover rates, exit interviews, to reveal critical insights into why employees leave and what gaps may exist in the HR practices. HR metrics development is very, very important when it helps us to keep track of the important areas and therefore to keep track of challenges when they arise. So metrics, yeah, is a way of identifying HR gaps. So then how do we respond to the gaps? One, we have to carry out a gap analysis. So we need to carry out a diagnostic study to establish where we are now and where we want to be. Then once we've done that, we prioritize action points and implementation actions. Remember about there are quite many, and the actions to address are also many, and they are different. To the likely interventions, which is the next slide, and we were looking at the gaps and how and the likely interventions for each gap. So we're looking at the competence gap and summarize that the hypothesis to institute a culture of continuous learning. The next slide. So you do upskilling trainings, on the job training, mentorship and coaching. Mentorship and coaching is gaining a lot of importance in the workspaces today because it addresses individual needs of the leaders and the supervisors. There's soft skills training programs and leadership programs. So there has to be this culture of continuous learning in our businesses. Then when we look at the engagement gaps, work-life balance is key these days. Um, the people coming into the labor force are very young and they have young families. So this is important, and we must institute family-friendly policies in our workplaces. Employee feedback systems, we need to have this as kind of a staff council system employees can air their career development programs, the importance of specialization. When we come to compliance gaps, are we living by what our standards are saying? Our quality is our quality assurance method in place. We need to do compliance training and HR systems monitoring. When it comes to culture gaps, leadership is important. Leaders must walk the talk. If they don't, then the rest of the organization doesn't either. We must align values to the work that we do, and I've already talked about walking the talk. When it comes to role clarity, clear job analysis process and job descriptions have to be made. Everybody needs to know what their job is on a daily basis and how to achieve results in their roles. Then diversity gaps. We need to have diversity and inclusion training because we in the workplaces today, variety in skills, variety in personalities, variety in the way people see things and perceive things. All these need to be aligned, and therefore the focus on diversity and inclusion training. Then productivity and performance gaps. We need to have very clear performance management systems, and performance must be aligned to the business objectives and strategies. And maybe we can also look at incentive and bonus schemes for those people who deliver on the right result. Then tracking and monitoring HR metrics. I cannot overemphasize this area. We must regularly monitor HR metrics. Turnover rates are very important. Why do people leave? Employee satisfaction helps identify recurring issues. Um, the number of training programs or hours of training that each employee is involved in. Appraisals, our ability to appraise and on time, and we keep track of that. So we need to have metrics which help us to be in line with what we set out to do. So going forward, what does the future look like? One, businesses need to be proactive in identifying HR needs. So we need to have a continuous assessment of skills and regular feedback mechanisms so that we ensure alignment with business goals. We also need to increase the use of technology and HR analytics and metrics. These provide deeper insights into workforce dynamics and help us to make the right decisions concerning staff. Then organizations should consider diversity and inclusion within their strategies to attract a wider talent pool. I'll end by this call to action by Ken Robinson. He said that human resources are like natural resources. They are often buried deep. Buried deep. You have to go looking for them. They are not just lying around on the surface. So when you see people walking around and in your workplaces, yes, they are there, but the actual value is not on the surface. You will not see it on the surface. You have to create the circumstances where they show themselves, where this value is allowed to come out of these individuals for the benefit of the individuals themselves and for the organization itself. So I would like to thank you for listening and to apologize for the hiccups that we've had with the technology. And I would like to invite you all to fill out our free HR diagnostic survey if you would like to identify and address the HR challenges your business may be facing. Like I've said, businesses are different, our focus areas are different, our strategies are different. So we all have different challenges. but we have challenges. So you can scan the link below as a starting point for identifying these challenges. I thank you very much for listening to me, and that brings us to the end of the presentation, and therefore we can move into the Q&A. Thank you,
Great.
Roland.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that, for sharing. A lot of learning in here for those of us. I mean, I imagine for all of us, you look at your organization and you see clearly that there is room for improvement in the space of human resource. There were a number of things which came up. I particularly like the way you broke down the nature of the gaps. And I believe many of us feel like possibly you have two or three of those gaps. Sometimes you feel like you have all of them. And you have also articulated very well how you can get on a journey to actually be able to kind of exit from this challenging environment. And for that we are absolutely grateful. So I'll go ahead to just share with you a couple of the questions which have come up. We have possibly just about 20 minutes for these questions. So I'll go to the chat box and I'll read them one by one and you could respond to them. Question one is just one moment. Yes, we had a question from Julius. Julius said, apart from cash payments, what alternatives do I have in terms of paying new staff? In case I replace the staff, staff numbers have grown and there's a lot of work. How else can I incentivize my team beyond cash? So Julius would want to be able to respond to that question. The next question is from Hassan. Hassan says, I just want Madam Mrs. Jennifer to give us some hints on employee engagement in a multi-generational workforce. Today, the workplaces have more than 3 generations. You have the Gen Zs in there, you have the millennials in there, you have on top of the millennials, possibly you have some baby boomers at the same time. How can I be able to kind of deal with those 2 or 3 generations? Yes. The next question which we had is Savia had this to ask: what do I do in case some of my some of my companies are guilty of almost all the gaps? And yes, Savia, I talked about the recording will come. But what do I do when I find my company has all of the gaps? In case you want to see all the previous sessions we have had, Derek has shared in the chat box our YouTube channel. Please join all the previous sessions on our YouTube channel so you can join that and follow it. Derek has put a link in there. Then Nafula asks, in Uganda, do we have bodies, organizations that protect or are voice for employees in the event of unfair employer treatment? Jennifer, you can address those questions. Jennifer, are you there? You're still muted.
I thought you were continuing the question.
No. Let's first address those, then we will have another round.
Should I respond to this? Okay,
Please
okay.
do. Please do.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll start with the one from Julius. Apart from cash payments, what alternatives can he use to incentivize his staff? Um, there are what are called reward and recognition programs in organizations. You may have seen in banks where they put employee of the month. That is part of reward and recognition. You can have a comprehensive reward and recognition program starting from things like of that nature, commendation letters. Write a commendation when somebody does something very well. And so that it is an example, you set an example for others. So you can comment on them in meetings, for example, commend them in meetings with other people so that well you enhance their egos and just to say that this kind of behavior is required in this organization, and when we see it we reward it. So there are those kinds of things, and at the end of an appraisal cycle you can also give those kinds of rewards, but then that is when you can give a bonus, for example, in terms of money. Bonuses are better than salary increments because when you increase people's salaries, human nature is such that if I perform very well today, tomorrow I may not perform so well. So if this year I have performed well, next year I may not perform well, and the other year I may not perform well. And yet you've given me this increment which you cannot take back. However, when you give a bonus or a specific incentive, you are rewarding that performance, and then it gives you time to observe this person's consistent performance behavior over a period of time before now you can give them a salary increment. So there are rewards and recognition programs that you can put in place to recognize good performance, to reward the values that you want to be enhanced in an organization. These details are there, they can be, you can take advantage of them. Then Hassan wanted hints on workplaces having more than three generations. I think the three key issues here are: one, each generation has a different way of looking at issues. For example, in the reign of the baby boomers, we grew up at a time where loyalty was very, very important, where consistency was important, where dependability was important. These days, the millennials do not kind of conform to those values, so to speak. They tend to be quite ambitious. They are not going to wait for, if a manager in a position is 45 years old, they are not going to wait for them to get to 60 before they can get into that position. So they do a lot of job hopping from one organization to another so that they can move up the hierarchy very fast. And the challenge here is that Ugandan organizations tend to advance a practice whereby to get more money, you must go up the hierarchy. We need to develop systems where there are horizontal rewards so that even when people are not moving up a hierarchy, you have a flat organization which recognizes expertise. Now, that is where the challenge is. That is what we need to develop. Now, the other thing to note about generations is that you, the owner of the workspace, you must put systems in place where this generations learn from each other, kind of reverse in a computer era. The baby boomers definitely it is not.
This meeting is being recorded.
It is not right, since this is a workplace. Mom is a family name. And no matter how good the workplace may be, there are certain protocols. The workplace addresses are different from family addresses. So it is best not to call people mom in the workplace or aunt in the workplace, um, and stick to the titles that are required in the workplace. And then, of course, there are personal preferences. One of the reasons I prefer to be called JK was one of those things. People would walk up to you and then the one says mom, the other one says aunt, the other one says all kinds of things. And I thought that I needed to be known by a specific term that I could identify with and which I liked. So I went out of my way to tell everyone that please call me JK. Okay, then victims of HR gaps. The staff see the gaps very well, but the bosses don't see the gaps. Again, differences in perceptions. Now, for you as the staff, what you see as an HR gap may not be that important to this person who is managing the whole organization. So the issue therefore is, how do you present the issue so that it is understood? And many times when we are presenting issues, we present them from our perspectives instead of presenting them from the perspective of the boss or from the perspective of the decision maker. So when you are proposing a challenge, how is it going to help the decision maker achieve their results? Present it from that angle. If you present it from, but for us this is the challenge and therefore this is the challenge, it normally does not yield the best results. I don't know whether you see what I am talking about. You need to get into the mindset of the decision maker. Where are they coming from? What are they trying to achieve? Then you present this issue so that it talks to what they are trying to achieve and where they are headed. That is normally where that disconnect is, but it can be improved upon. Then do HR gaps manifest or spill over into customer care? Definitely they do. If you are not happy, the customers will get the brand of that unhappiness. So it is very important that when you have uh, employees who are happy with what they do, who believe in what they are doing, and who are ready, who have got in your vision and are ready to pass it on to the customer, you are going to get great results. So definitely, it is these employees who interface with the customer. It is important that their assets are aligned with businesses mindset. Then there was Isabella, who said, okay, this is kind of similar to the earlier one, that an employer is a problem, but the decision makers do not see it as a problem. I think I have responded to this one. And then I seem to have missed two of the questions. How do you deal with a boss who belittles you, who does not see the value in you and keeps on criticizing you? Yes. Remember when we talked about gaps, these gaps are not just for employees, they are also gaps for leaders and owners of businesses. That is why leadership is very, very important. How do you become a good leader? Leaders influence others to pull in the same direction as themselves. So when you see a leader who does not have the right perspective on how they can get the best out of their people. You remember the last quotation that I gave, that human resources are like natural resources. They are barren. And when you look at a person superficially, you will never understand who they are and how their contribution can make a difference to your organization. So leaders, good leaders, go out of their way to make sure that those values, those skills, those abilities that are hidden deep down come to the surface for the benefit of the organization. Then there was a question on low-level employees, which I didn't get so well. I am not in a position to answer that.
I think the question was
I
how
don't
do you
I
deal
don't know
with the
what the
mindset?
question was for the low-level employees.
Yeah, I think how do you deal with the mindset? You say things are supposed to be done this way, but they keep saying, no, this is the way we do things. That's the question.
Okay. First of all, we have to listen. You know, very many times you are not the one doing the job. You are setting your ways. You think that if this job is done like this, we are going to get the results we need. But when you listen to the people who are actually doing the work, you will realize why we do the job one way and not another. So our ability to be humble as supervisors and leaders and to listen to this, at least if you do not agree, yeah, you can agree to disagree amicably, but at least you would have listened. Now, that listening and that tolerance for divergent views is what makes a difference in the workplaces. And even if you think these people's perspective is not right, there might be one or two small things that you can adopt. Things you create harmony in the really care. But if you everything is no, 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 then that is how you get people to be aggressive and to think that their leaders are not with them. And then that, of course, has negative implications for the culture of the organization. So we need to be tolerant of one another. We need to listen to each other. And there are many ways of doing the same thing and achieving even better results. It is important that we do what? We look at issues from that perspective. And I think that brings us to the end, Ronald. And
Yes, please.
for people who have challenges,
Thank you so much.
we have indicated a link that they can scan and we can have a chat uh, at an individual level.
Great. Please go ahead and scan the barcode That way you can be able to engage with Jennifer and the
Thank you
team
very much,
directly.
Ronald.
The barcode is still up, so please go ahead and scan it. When you scan it, you'll get an opportunity to engage with the team directly and to be able to diagnose yourself at a very personal level to see what gaps exist in your business. Madam Jennifer, thank you so much for a really a very insightful conversation. I just wanted to request you to take just the last 2 minutes, just sharing your final remarks as we wrap up the conversation. Madam Jennifer, are you there?
Can't hear me.
Oh, sorry, you are muted. So you can just share your final comments and your wrap up.
Yeah, but I'm still on the call.
All right. I think we're having a bit of trouble. Jennifer, are you there? All right, friends. I think we're having another connection problem, but I guess just wanted to say thank you to Jennifer and the team, Nicholas and the entire team. Thank you so much for really sharing your hearts with us this morning, putting us in a place where we can be able to say, you know, there are a couple of things we can change. At the heart of the business recovery series is this idea that all of us can be able to do better. And that's really what we're about. And even today's session is just supposed to nudge us into a certain direction where we can be able to do things a bit better. We have had the managing partner from the quality assurance and management consultants. He has been supported by someone in the background. Nicholas, thank you so much for making this connection. We're very honored. Let's go out there and make sure that we get better. The slides will be shared, and we will also share the recording that will come through on email. But we just wanted to say thank you so much for joining. It's always an honor to have you every Thursday. We'll be back next Thursday, still with a conversation on business and how to do business better. And we look forward to a powerful presentation. I think, Jennifer Chigwe Godfrey says, I appreciate JK's presentation, which was good, and I'll listen to it again from the recording. He joined a bit late, but he's also sharing his appreciation. Please just share a bit of flowers for JK, who has shared her heart with us today. Just put out a bit of flowers for her as you say bye. I see Felicity saying, thank you so much, JK. It was worth my time. Great. David Gumisiriza says, merci beaucoup. I see a couple of hearts coming out. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And friends, we'll be back next week on Thursday. For those of you who would want a visit, just kind of to diagnose yourself, please scan the code. We have left the code on the front page. That way you can engage directly with the team from quality assurance and management consultants, and you can be able to get kind of a personalized diagnosis. This is a service which they offer commercially, and we would be honored if you could engage them and be able to do business with them. I see a number of thank yous here from Josh saying thank you. I see Daisy Nafula saying thank you. As someone who leads a team, Pauline saying thank you so much for the presentation. Same from Joel, saying thank you from Isabella. Asante, asante. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely week. We'll be back next Thursday, still with a separate conversation on how we can be able to do business better. Keep going, keep pushing. We have put a link to the ETW. Those of you who would want to attend the entrepreneurship training workshop, please do apply so that we can be able to grow together. Have a blessed day and see you next week.